night is the Rangers Journal night.
Good evening and welcome to your Rangers Journal Friday night show. For you tonight, we've got a match review from a well-earned point over in Greece, and then we'll take a look ahead to the Hearts game at the weekend. Just before we get into that, I would just like to shout out to our pod sponsors, Premier VPN, providing simple, safe and reliable VPN solution. You can find them on Twitter, searching Premier VPN, or online, searching the same in Google. Right then, so let's get into this. First up, Cammy, thanks for joining us. Cammy, how you doing, mate?
I'm good. Only feels like 5 minutes ago since I done the post-match last night, so it's been interesting just to catch up with when you talk immediately after the match. It's always interesting, I think, just to watch a wee bit more of the highlights and just see bits and pieces that you've maybe missed. But my thoughts are pretty much the same as they were, but I'm looking forward to going into the game in a bit more detail.
Nice one. And Doug, cheers for coming on, mate. How's you after last night?
Yeah, feeling good. I predicted, not to shout myself out, but I predicted a 1-1 in the lowdown, and predicted Czerny to play well. So I'm feeling pretty good. Happy that happy things went as I'd hoped. Although that said, I do think we could have won the game.
Yep, hard to disagree with that, mate, and I'm sure we'll come on to that. Last but certainly not least, Scotty, how you doing, man?
I'm good, mate. I am good. I'm not even surprised at our performance last night because it's just typically as Rangers team, innit? It came out and perform like that when they've been under so much criticism recently. Very, very good performance overall. So I'm sitting here quite happy about the night.
That's the one. Okay, so let's get into it then. Cammy, I'll come to you first. Team sheet. I guess there's probably a few surprised folk out there when the team sheet came out. What were your thoughts when you saw it?
I was pleased that the big call was made. I think Robin Proper was more of a surprise, to be honest with you, because I think he hadn't really had a lot of opportunities over the last 2 or 3 games. But I think the team pretty much picked itself. We're obviously limited with regard to particularly forward and wide options. So Diomande coming in for obviously Lawrence out for the next few weeks. It was only really the defensive positions, namely right back, and who partnered Suter. So I was quite content with the team, and it was just how we approached the game as much as the sort of starting 11, you know. So I didn't have an issue at all with the selection.
Yeah, and Doug, obviously you're quite a well-known avid Tavernier supporter. Were you surprised he was dropped? Did it maybe make sense? Because I know you have mentioned before, obviously Clement's called out that he cannot play every game. Did you expect him to be dropped for this one?
I kind of thought it might be coming. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, he's been making high-profile errors in recent games, and errors that are leading to goals as well. So there's only so much that you can. I think he's maybe given him the opportunity to try and play himself back into form. He'd obviously had a bit of a tough start to the season, interrupted pre-season, that kind of thing. But I think that we've gotten into it a wee while now. His form was continuing to be kind of middling, although he was. I still think he's contributing slightly more creatively than some people were suggesting, but there was that concern defensively. So I think we had gotten to the point where the time to swap him out was there. We saw a decent uplift when he came off in the Motherwell game. So it was the time to give it a try and to give Sterling that opportunity to stake his claim for the shirt, because that shirt's is going to become available. So we need to start looking at who's going to be the one to take it.
No, I totally agree with that, mate. And Scotty, just on Robin Proper, Cammy kind of alluded to it. It's a bit of a surprise to see him come in there. Were you expecting him to come in, or were you surprised that maybe Clement didn't rest Balogun for the Motherwell game and bring him back in for the Olympiacos game? You're on mute, mate.
I wasn't surprised that Proper coming back in for a European game. I think he suits the European nights. What I will say, for all the criticisms he's had with his physicality domestically, I thought he handled that big striker fairly well last night. I thought Proper was probably the standout defender. I think, don't get me wrong, I know Suter had a very, very good game, but I think Proper restored a lot of confidence in fans with his performance last night. I think we know that, yeah, he can do a job, even though he had that blip against St Mirren.
I think there's quite a few fans have called out the kind of similarities almost between Davies and Proper, and the fact that both seemed more kind of suited to the European environment maybe than they are domestically. Is that something you'd agree with, Scotty?
It's a wee bit too soon to judge for me, to be honest with you. I mean, he's only been here since tail end August. It's a new league. He's played in the one league all his career. Not like Ben Davies, where he comes in for a big fee for down south. Proper was only really a fraction of that, let's be honest. I get the similarities, but Proper has got a wee bit more physicality about him than Davies.
Aye. Okay, so just moving on a bit from the defence then. I'm just curious, Cammy, what was your thoughts on the three that we played? So I know Dio was technically a 10, but you can see from the imagery here, he's way back. He's properly supporting the midfield. Did you think that gave us a bit more solidity in the middle of the park there?
Without a doubt, you know, I've spoke about this a lot. I was frustrated, spoke about it in the post-match last night, that my worry is when we come up against decent opposition that we're too easily cut open. Manager very dogmatic, and this is the way I'm going to play through hell and high water sort of situation. So I was pleased not to see Tom Lawrence injured, because he has contributed some big moments for us so far this season. I just think that Dio, I wish we had Dio. Dio is more likely to almost make it a 3. So it's like almost like a 6 and 2 8s at times, but without harking back to the Gerrard flat 3 sort of situation. I just think you've got a bit more structure, and I think Dio had some positive moments, I thought, in the first half last night, but I thought he was probably the weakest of the 3, but he more than played his part in the overall team structure and the way that we were out of possession particularly.
Yeah. And Doug, where do you kind of fall on that? Do you prefer Dio in there because he maybe does add a bit more to the midfield, or would you rather see an out-and-out attacking option, maybe more like a Lawrence in that 10 role?
Yeah, I think it's something that we can vary depending on the opposition. I mean, in Europe, in general, you know, you're obviously up against higher quality teams, and even the teams that we're expecting to beat are generally often of better quality than what we'll face domestically. So I think you can kind of play with that a little bit. I mean, I thought the midfield unit were really impressive in that game, and you know, Raskin and Barron in particular as a pair. You often see in matches that you're, particularly in the modern game, your centre backs are the players that have the most touches in a game, because the ball's always played out to them and they're always playing it out to other players. At last night's game, in our top 4 most touches, all 3 midfielders were in there. And I think that really shows, you know, that they were really on the ball a lot of the time, and they were the real focus of the team. And like I said, you know, they were a really strong unit. They covered a lot of ground. There's still a room for improvement in the passing. Sometimes there's a couple of times when we were further up the pitch, Diomande would get the ball and kind of sort of run into a wee bit of a dead end. Sometimes I think he could still maybe quicken up his speed of thought, maybe, or just get his eyes moving around the pitch a little bit more to try and find an option. Again, that might be something that's, you know, we've talked at length about the idea of an experienced 6 with that kind of skill set. So, I mean, again, maybe we're yet to bring in someone that will bring that. But But yeah, I was really impressed. That was one of the most cohesive performances between the three of them. And I think that did come from them being a bit more compact, being a bit closer together, being able to talk to one another and pass the ball, making those kind of triangles through the midfield. And you saw quite a lot, I feel like, of the three of them getting the ball and then us spreading it out nice and wide to the two wide men who are our informed players right now. And we got a lot of joy from that and made a good amount of chances as well.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I think looking at that midfield, I mean, we've all talked about Barron repeatedly since the season started. I think it's fair to say Raskin as well is really starting to come into a game for narrowly picked in the group chat last night as the Rangers Journal man of the match. Was pretty much between him and Barron. Just looking at this starts to give you some idea of the amount of work that Raskin put in last night. I was quite surprised when I compared it to Connor Barron's because Barron's was very much on this right-hand side. Raskin seems to have been absolutely everywhere. Cammy, does that kind of fit what you saw in the game? Just being literally everywhere, because it was amazing the amount of places he did pop up last night.
I think it's sometimes when you see the graphic, I always go on the eye test on what you're actually watching. I was more aware of Connor Barron being more predominantly sort of inside right of the rather than slap bang in the centre, But I think that graphic shows. I mean, the two of them were a couple of tigers in the middle of the park. I'm really pleased for Nico that he's getting a run of fitness, and I think he's had it's been very stop-start his Rangers career, but I think he's shown great energy and tenacity, and I think it's interesting. I remember some weeks ago talking about Raskin and Barron, and I thought they were fighting for the same shirt. There is part of me still thinks that, but they have sometimes circumstances throw people together, and I think at this moment the two of them are giving us a sort of sound basis for us to be solid and to go forward. And I think both of them are setting a tempo, and they're just their energy and their pressing, and I think that can be infectious on their teammates. But it's an impressive graphic, and I went for Connor Barron on the post-match last night, although I did give notable mention to Nico, and I think Cherny. That was the three players for me that I thought were best in Rangers colours last night.
No, totally agree. Doug, just kind of looking at the radar on the right, this is based on Europa League games this season. He's actually up top for tackles and interceptions, 99th percentile. I think what surprised me when I saw it was he's actually reasonably high in the pass and possession metrics as well. I think we all probably appreciate the amount of defensive work that he does winning the ball back. Are you surprised to see him quite so high in the kind of progressing area as well?
No, I don't think necessarily surprised. He did show some signs that he was decent on the ball when he first came in. I mean, I'm really pleased that we're starting to see again the re-emergence of that player, because he came in and he started really brightly before starting to get injuries and kind of dropping out of the team. And it's really encouraging to have him there to do that. And like Cammy said, I think a lot of people kind of look at Raskin and Barron as kind of similar kind of players, but I do think Raskin is a little bit better on the ball at the moment. Certainly, it was something that was talked about when he first arrived. So if he can provide that, while in addition to being able to do a bit of the hustle bustle and supporting Barron in that when we're in Europe, but can maybe provide a little bit more guile when we're in the games with the tighter defences, then that's something that will really help the team. And I think part of that comes from being comfortable on the pitch and being confident. And if he can continue this, good run, he'll build those things. He'll get more confident. He'll get more comfortable. The understand between them will grow, and hopefully we'll see more of that. And he can push that higher and start, making chances. You've got his heat, excuse me, his heat map there. He was slightly more advanced than Barron. And next he's got that he kind of took up the kind of right side. And when I looked at Dio's heat map, he kind of was floating to the left. So, they've obviously got, I think, sort of positional leanings within that midfield, despite the fact of where they're maybe positioned to start. And so that kind of, to me, shows that, Nico is the slightly more advanced one, and Barron is the one that's maybe going to set a bit more. And I think that kind of works looking at the skill sets that they seem to have.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Scotty, we're going to need to talk about it. I don't think we can avoid it much longer. Cyril Dessers simultaneously rescued us a point and cost us 3, arguably. I'm not even going to ask if you were surprised he scored his hardest effort. I guess the question to you is, how long do you think we can persevere with Dessers up top? Because I think everyone kind of acknowledges he maybe isn't the answer at number 9. But I think we have to be realistic as well at the minute. And this may change, Danilo might come into form, but at the minute we don't really have a clinical option to replace him. So how long does that continue? Or do you just say, you know what, forget it, we'll just give Igman the time and get him up to speed?
This almost goes back with me, Dave. This almost goes back to this time in January when we were all sitting saying the same thing. You bring in a clinical striker in January, you potentially go on. I'm not saying you win a league, but you're closer. You're not. There's not an 8-point gap there. I don't really care what anybody says. I was listening to Carlton Hand the other day, and Adam Thornton had said there's a good striker can cover up, paper over cracks in a team, and a bad striker can show them. Now, the problem is with Dessers is he's good and bad, as you've seen last night. His 2 easiest chances he missed. Don't get me wrong, the second one that's right in front of the keeper, his back's to goal, it's difficult to twist, etc. But for me, we can't keep going, we can't keep relying on this boy. No, he's our number 1 striker anyway. For the outlay we paid for him, with $4.5 million for the wages he's on, I would imagine he'll be quite a high earner. We need to get, if we get another offer in January, we need to let this guy go, and we need to bring in somebody that knows where the back of the net is. Or whether that's going to be a hybrid forward that can play in the wings or whatever you want. I just want somebody that can score goals for Rangers. It's really not that hard. Do you know what I mean? And Dessers isn't scoring goals for Rangers just now. You can come at me and argue he's at 2 and 2, but he could have 5 or 6 and 2 last night. Between that and a League Cup, it's a tiresome subject, if I'm being honest with you, Dave, because I do genuinely like the guy. As a person, I think he looks like a great guy, but if I can also dislike him very quickly when it comes to him pulling on that jersey and running on that park, because he's costing us points. I know he's the only one there, and Danilo's on his way back. Niggerman's just a project striker, but this goes back to Rangers. This falls back on Rangers not fixing the centre forward problem. As Cammy probably feels the same way about number 6. Do you know what I mean? It's just tiring. Just even a lone striker. I know the finances under there. We're even doing scouting videos for Rangers that telling you players that you could go and sign. So it's just, as I said, it's tiresome. And I think the best case scenario for Big Dessers between now and January is getting Danilo fitter and bringing him on off the bench and letting him have an impact that way. The only problem with doing that is, Dave, is that you can't have a £4.5 million striker sitting on the bench. I think I was messaging Cammy about last week, and I was saying to him, like, if he costs £1 or £2 million, I've not got a complaint about Cyril Dessers. Not one complaint, because you know what you get what you pay for, and to me that's about all he's worth.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that, to be honest, mate. And Cammy, just coming to you, obviously we've mentioned Danilo. Scotty's kind of said, he'd like to see a clinical striker brought in. I was speaking to Scotty about this the other night. He is. He always is. I was speaking to Scotty the other night about this, and I was saying I genuinely don't think we will bring in a striker in January, short of being able to shift Dessers. And rumour has it we did have an offer, and he didn't want to go. Do you think that we'll bring in anyone in January, or do you think this is it for the season?
I think a lot depends on what happens over the next couple of months. You just don't know what's going to happen with Danilo's fitness. You've got to think he's been with us for over a year, has barely strung 5-6 games together. It's a lot to ask. So I think if Danilo remains fit and a squad option, Igaman remains fit and a squad option, I think this will be what we go to the end of the season. However, I said last night that an opportunity may come up. This is where qualifying for the knockout stages of the Europa League, picking up points and picking up extra income, you might be able to get somebody that's out of contract in the summer, and you might be able to do a deal in January. You just don't know what's going to... The January window is always very, very difficult to get the sort... And I still think the spine of the side, I still think we need a centre-half. I still think we need a number 6. I still think we need a number 9. It's like I am a broken record, and I've been consistent on it over the last wee while. But I think Sunday you might see an opportunity for Danilo to start, and you maybe get an hour out of him. Aye. I think that's off the back of a European game. But I think, to get back to your original question, I think as it stands now, I think we'll probably stick with what we've got unless something changes with regard to the fitness of the other options. But a hybrid would be great. Somebody that's brilliant and can play on the right, can play on the left, and can score goals. But I think every club in the world's looking for that sort of value. But I think when funds are limited, if you can get a hybrid player, then all the better, rather than just somebody that's a number 9, but somebody that's versatile. It's Cyril Dessers is just... I don't think I've ever, all my years watching Rangers, scratched my head and been happy for a player so much in a 90 minutes. It's like he just... I am like Scotty. It is quite a tiresome subject. I've got a lot of time for the big man, but equally I just want to... Even my wee boys like, Daddy, he's got to score that. And that's a 7-year-old that's just learning. He's got to score that, even if he is offside for the first chance and then the second chance. But I'm very much like, this is Cyril Dessers for as long as he remains at the club. This is just what we have to just go along for the ride, unfortunately.
Aye, tell me about it. Scotty, that's you got your next scouting project for the lads, all right? Benjamin Nigerin.
I believe RFC 72 is our chief scout as well. That's who's behind everything.
Wow, there we go. We'll have a full profile by the end of this show. Right, Doug, I'll come to you first on this one. Looking at the games that we've got left in the Europa League, just before we move on, we've got Nice, Tottenham, Man United, and then USG. I think conventional wisdom says we probably need about 9-10 points to qualify. Obviously, we're on 7 now. What do you think is possible from those games, and will it kind of tick us over to that qualification?
Yeah, I think we should be looking to qualify, definitely. I think we've played well so far. Even in the Lyon game, we had patches of good play, despite the scoreline at the end. I think we can potentially do the same if we play well in the next game against Nice. I don't see why we can't get a draw in that game as well. And then I've said since day one that we should be looking to get 3 points from the last game. Although I will say that they have actually been playing quite well. in some of their games as well. But I'd still be looking to get 3 points from that. So, that takes us, over the 9 quite comfortably there. I think if we can get a draw in the next game, we can go into the Tottenham and Man United games and just kind of enjoy them. And again, I certainly don't want to, I don't want to count my chickens and suggest that the last game's an easy game. That's certainly not the case. But if we get that draw and therefore have set ourselves up to have it as much as we can. It's really hard. Obviously, it's really hard in this format to be able to say you're definitely going to get through regardless, because there could be a whole bunch of teams with the same points as us, and then we're getting our goal difference and all that. So it's hard to guarantee, but I think that sets us up as best as possible to say it's within our power. Having a home game against a beatable team at the last one, and then, as I say, I think that to me means we can kind of go into these 2 games against the English teams and just kind of more enjoy the occasions. They're obviously going to be the most difficult teams matches. I think Spurs from the get-go for me was the hardest game. You would normally suggest it would be Man United, but Man United have been a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde team this season so far, so I was kind of putting them behind Tottenham. I think the Tottenham game will be tough. They may not play a full-strength team, though. I noticed they didn't play a full-strength team the other night. So you never know. We might have a wee bit of a chance there to again, it's at home, so I won't write us off completely to be able to get a draw in that game, but that will be the toughest one, without a doubt. And then, unfortunately for us, Man United have sacked, obviously, Erik ten Hag. That's the absolute worst thing that could have happened from our point of view, I think. Obviously, so they've got Van Nistelrooy's taken over just now. He's got, I think he's already getting a better tune out of the team in the sort of the short period he's had. I think, what was it, 2 games he's managed. I think they've already looked slightly better. And obviously their new coach coming in, I rate him as a really good coach. I think he'll do potentially good things there. So that could be that could now become a very difficult game. So I'm not really necessarily counting for much out of those 2, but yeah, I can definitely see us being able to get out of this knockout round.
Cool. And Scotty, same to yourself, mate. What do you think's a reasonable expectation from those final 4 games?
Nice have only got 2 points for 4 matches. I think it's all about, any time I tend to get ahead of myself, Cammy's quick enough to say it's 1 game at a time. Depends where we are, come at time, etc. He's a voice of reason, isn't he?
He's mentioned that once or twice, eh?
So I think for me, when we get to Tottenham and Man U, it needs to be about the narrative. It's about the title of the show tonight. It's about us going in with the attitude that it's just a free hit. We're not really expecting something. Whereas if we're going in on the back of a couple of bad results, then we're all feeling the same way that we were last week, and the mood around the club if we get beat 4-5-0 off of Tottenham is worse than what it would be, say, right now. If we were to play Tottenham maybe next Thursday night and it's our next match after a good performance against Hearts and you get beat 3 or 4-0, then you kind of expect it. You're realistic about it. Whereas if we're going into these matches in a bad place, your emotions get better of you first and you can't really think rationally. I mean, these clubs think, Man, you've spent like £1 billion on their team or something like that. It's something as crazy as that.
Ridiculous,
we need to be realistic, right? We can punch up of our weight in certain matches like Nice, Olympiacos, but when it comes to like Tottenham and Man U, then it's going to be about us trying not to make an arse of ourselves, basically. That's pretty much the way I see it, Dave. It's about what I liked about last night's performance, but it's changing the narrative in the sense of we've got mobility in the team now. You can see the way Clement's trying to play, and it's because of the likes of Diamande coming into the 10, or if he's making that 10 role more of an 8 because he's mobility, and he's making it harder for opposition teams. You've got Sterling that's went in the right back last night. I thought he was man of the match first half. He wasn't that good with he bought his feet, but he was absolutely solid. Proper and Suter were good at the back. I could go on all night. It's about keeping that positive feeling going between now and Tottenham, as far as I'm concerned. And I think I brought up the next few league matches. It's like Hearts and Johnston. It's all the next 4 league games are all very winnable. And even with Nice next in amongst that, I fancy us to take something.
Cammy, just quickly, same to yourself, mate. Do you think 4-6 points is a reasonable take from those last 4 games?
I think so. I think it would be brilliant to go to Nice and pick up the win and essentially have qualified with 3 games to go. You know, prior to last night, I thought last night would have been, and this is not dismissing Nice at all, I thought last night would have been a harder game than going to Nice. And I still think that is the case. Philippe Clement has managed us, I think, 6 times. I've seen the stat this morning away from home in Europe, and so I think I've got doubts about lots of things that he does, but I don't think anybody can question our sort of form away from home. And I think if we could go there and get a win, it would be fantastic. But another point, the 2 games against the English teams, 3 hits, cliche central, all that sort of stuff, you don't know where those teams are going to be at that time as well, who they play. I just had a quick look there. Tottenham's next match is against Roma at home. So I think Tottenham are sitting, 10 out of 12 points so far, or 9 out of 12 or something along those lines. So they're maybe a win or 2 away from sort of cementing. But I think making the knockout stages, I think we've gave ourselves a real opportunity for that. But Tottenham seems like, what's that, about 5 weeks away till we play Tottenham. There's so much can change in the space of a few days. You know the mood after just a couple of more positive performances, and in the world of Rangers, things, that's why I'm the old dad that always says you can only look one game at a time, because in the world of Rangers, things change so quickly. We're so bipolar and so changeable as a support.
No, absolutely. Okay, so just before we move on to looking at Hearts, I just want to give a quick shout out to a competition that we're running at the Rangers Journal. It's a giveaway for the anniversary kit. Once it's released, all you need to do is look up the channel on Twitter, retweet the tweet, tag a friend, and subscribe to the channel and post your proof below. That'll be drawn as soon as it's out, and Scotty will be putting his hand in his pocket to go and fetch one for you. Okay, so looking at the Hearts game then.
Sorry, Dave, it's just to say that's available on Facebook as well.
There we go.
Can I just quickly, just before, I just want to have a wee moan about this. Rangers have advertised this very nice strip with a very nice goalkeeper's kit, right, that you can't buy.
Aye. I was trying to avoid that, Cammy.
I'd heard David Edgar talking about it, and I'm not quite as obsessed as he is with regard to collecting strips and all that sort of stuff. But I just find what Castore and Rangers are surely trying to maximise. There's no infant kits also available. I think we're trying to maximise revenue. I just find that a wee bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah.
That you're actually promoting a nice looking. Everything looks really, really smart. Why, particularly leading up to Christmas and all that sort of stuff. But that's it's just it's a pet hate of mine that we just don't do the basics right. It's the same on and off the park. If you get the basics right, then you have a better functioning club. So I just had to, while that graphic came up, I just had to get that off my chest.
Nah, I don't blame you, mate. I guess all I can say, it's kind of symptomatic of a lot of things that are happening at the club at the minute. It just doesn't really seem very well thought out, does it? Okay, so Doug, you need to ping your address over to Curry, mate. He's wanting to send you a comfort blanket now Tav's dropped. Hate to say it, Doug, we'll come on to this, but I've got a bad feeling
Rested.
I've got a bad feeling he'll be back at the weekend anyway, so yeah, we'll come to that. just first, so obviously Hearts lost narrowly to the German team Heidenheim in their Europa League game. And looking at the league table here, second from bottom. However, we had a pretty good record against them until tail end of last season. We had that 3-0 draw, which we then followed up with a 0-0 at the start of this season. Cammy, I'll come to you first, mate. Do you feel like that second from bottom in the league is really representative? Because I watched that Hearts game after ours last night, and it didn't look a team that should be second bottom.
No, I've spoke to one or two people today. I never watched the game last night, but the new manager seems to have had a positive impact. I've always had decent players. They did make some good signings in the summer. Danda and Spittle, I think, are good players. The guy that scored a lot of goals for them last season, obviously playing up front. But I always look forward to playing Hearts. It's one of the fixtures, home or away, that I always enjoy. And if you think back to the end of February last year, that was probably our last brilliant performance when we beat Hearts 5-0 at Ibrox. I would love something similar on Sunday, some sort of statement performance, but it's probably a bit ambitious off the back of Europe. I think the most important thing is that we win and we continue the sort of feel good going into the international break. But Hearts I think they'll end up top 6, to be honest with you. I'll be very surprised if they stay in the lower echelons of the SPFL for very much longer.
Yeah. And Doug, just carrying on with the sort of look at the Hearts side, what do you think is the kind of threat from them? Obviously, you're our tactics man. We know the big lump that Scotty loves isn't really on form, so who should we be watching out for here, mate?
Well, he's still worth paying attention to. He's still creating chances for them, although he may not be necessarily scoring. He's top for assists for them at the moment. I think he's top for big chances created for them as well. So he's still doing work for the team. But yeah, I mean, his scoring rate is definitely just plummeted off a cliff.
I love that, Doug. You're always looking at a bigger picture, mate. Always looking at a bigger picture.
He's not looked as fit this season. There has been a bit of chat about his weight. So, he could maybe get a bit of fitness up. But, I mean, I think it could be part of, like what we said before, the new manager seems to be getting a little bit more out of them in the immediate instance. I think they seem to be struggling with concentration this season under the previous regime. They were making loads of silly mistakes in defence, which was costing them goals, which was costing them games. Their central midfield has been quite creative. They've got a decent sort of spread of assists through there. Obviously, Cammy mentioned Danda's a really good player. I think he's still played reasonably well, but for some reason it just hasn't been coming together. Let's say I think there's been some issues maybe with concentration. Maybe that's part of gelling the new players. Maybe the manager just wasn't gelling them very well. But I think we will see improvements. To me, they're a far better team than their league position. So I think if the new manager can address whatever it was that was holding them back, they will shoot up the league fairly quickly, because they do have a good team like the Danda, Spitland, Forest. Behind Shankland is a really good. I think that's a top half attack for an SPL team. So if they can sort out the mistakes they're making at the back, then they'll probably be fine. But thankfully they're not quite there yet. So hopefully that means that we'll still. We can still take advantage of the downturn. We haven't lost the Hearts in 16 league matches, so we should, obviously be going in as confident as we normally would. Hearts are being particularly poor away from home as well, so that helps us. They've also conceded the most penalties this season, so maybe we get a bit of luck there. Back in the team, get a goal, so that might work. But I think they will improve, given a bit of time under the new manager.
Right. And Scotty, Cyril Dessers v Lawrence Shankland. It's the stuff of legends, eh? I think in Shankland's defence, though, just before I come on to Scotty, was he not being played as a 10 for a while? And when Naismith was still... Yeah, I thought that. Was such a strange one. Right, Scotty, Lawrence Shankland, tell us why you think he's still a threat then.
It just always is a threat. He scored against every team in the country last season multiple times. If we're actually going to sit here and write that guy off, then we shouldn't be doing a podcast, honestly. He'll just pop up with a goal whenever, and when he does score and break a stock, they expect him to go on some kind of scoring streak. What I was saying earlier about Adam Thornton and a good striker can make a bad team good, and etc. etc. That's what Shankland was doing last season. I'm not saying Hearts were bad, but he was carrying him on his shoulders. Let's be honest about it. He's a reason they finished so comfortably in third last season. He's and I do believe once he gets that first goal, the narrative will change for him. I think the goals will start to come. He has been moved out of position this season. Obviously, I've kept an eye on him. Has been played more of a 10, as Doug says. He's the top chance creator and all this kind of stuff. He's your number 9. Get him in the box.
Aye.
Let him do some of his stuff out of work. But we're not here to speak about Hearts number 9s, and I just feel as if we were to get rid of Dessers in January at the end of the season, you've got a guy that can score goals for free on less wages sitting there. That's the only...
And Scottish.
I've only ever said bring him in as part of the striking department. Knowledge of it at number 9, because he is getting older. I think he's around about the same 29 or something now. But Rangers would be silly not to keep an eye on him at the weekend. I would probably want Balogun in at centre half with I'd probably be you probably better bring in Balogun alongside Suter, because anytime Balogun's played against Shankland, he's had a good record against him. He's managed to keep quiet. So that's the defensive pair, and I would go with to get Lawrence Shankland another black mark on Sunday.
Aye. Okay, and just looking at potential starting lineup, we did a run-up pod this kind of poll this week to pick all these positions. Scotty was slacking, so I just kind of knocked up one for a bit of conversation. Pretty sure Curry's going to have a meltdown because he sees that I put Tavernier in there. As I said, I do expect that he'll come back in for this one, if I'm being honest. I think if he doesn't start this one, then it probably is a bit of a statement beyond just I'm resting him, especially the international break after. So, Cammy, just looking at that kind of back five of Butland and goals, and then Tavernier, Suter, Balogun, Ridvan. I think Ridvan's the kind of surprise there. I think it'd be good to get some minutes in, maybe 60, 65. Gives Jeff Day another break as well. Do you see any kind of surprises there? Who do you think will be changed from what I've chucked in this one?
I don't think it'll be far away, to be honest with you, Dave. I would still expect Jeffy to start. Ridvan, in an ideal world, he manages to get, he's on the bench and he manages to get some minutes. Tavernier, it's going to be interesting because he took Sterling off last night. I think there's probably a managing minutes, sports science, injury, something along those lines. But I thought it was very telling that it was Casa that came on. Although Tav eventually did come on, it's a different skill set in a game against Hearts that's going to be asked to a game in Europe, like going to Nice sort of situation. I think go to Nice in a few weeks' time, I think you do exactly the same. You play Dujon, but I think in a game like Sunday, it will be very interesting to see the manager, if it is just a managing minutes or if it is part of a wider strategy. I do think Casa is probably better going forward than Casa going forward is probably a bit stronger than Sterling, to be honest with you. But Haji's not a bad shout, to be honest with you. I think having Haji and Danilo, two players that weren't involved, didn't travel, that can't be underestimated when you're trying to freshen things up. But I think that both, I think Haji's most likely to get minutes off the bench. I don't think that predicted 11's very far away. After the international break, hopefully we've got your Matondos, and don't laugh everybody, but the more options that we do have, the better, to enable us to maybe try Bayrami in the more central position, play Matondo on the left hand side, or Cortez on the left hand side. Ridvan could go to left back, Jeffy can go one on. You just want the options that you're able to mix things up. But I think for Sunday, I think the 5 o'clock kickoff will help us. It's not like we're coming back from Greece and going into a lunchtime kickoff. I know there's only 5 hours of a difference, but from the sleeping point of view and all that sort of stuff, and they're no forcing spaghetti down their neck at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning. They can have a normal sort of preparation lead up to it. So I don't expect too many, but I think Balogun to come back in, I think, is guaranteed. I would like to see Danilo starting and get an hour under his belt.
And Doug, just looking at this side, obviously touch on anyone else that you think may be different from this, but I just want to set you and Curry up for your next fight once Tavernier retires. So got a question here. Am I the only person that's not enamoured with Diamande? Just too clumsy and gets into bother with a terrible first touch. So I've got him starting at 10. Curry would have him starting with the water bottles, I think. What's your kind of thoughts on him, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good player, and I think there's still more to potentially see from him. Again, he's also had little periods in and out on occasion, and the team's changed a lot in the time that he's been here. He's obviously arrived at the tail end of the previous sort of quote unquote era, and then has been here through the sort of this change of the guard. So I think there's potentially still more to see from him when as he's settling with this team. I do think I sort of touched on it a little bit earlier. I do think on occasion he does sometimes kind of find himself in a bit of a dead end, or could maybe do a little bit more with the ball on occasion. So there is a little bit, as I said, I'd like to see develop from there. I like the shout of seeing Haji. I to be honest, would quite like to see him coming in from the start, just to get those minutes in. I think he came in and was really, he looked fit, he looked ready when he came off the bench previously. So I think he's ready to play. And particularly, looking at Cherny and Barami, two players, I don't know what the international fixtures are, but if their countries are playing, they're probably playing. So they could be ones to potentially look to maybe rest with the thought that if they're going to play over the international break. That goes for any of the players for that matter. If anyone's likely to be playing, then there could be potentials for resting. I'd like to see Danilo get as many minutes as possible. We touched on Dessers earlier, and I do think that the narrative slightly against Dessers in that, yes, he's not where we want him to be, or where we need him to be in terms of his clinical striking, but a lot of the weight that's pressed upon him is because of the failures behind him, because we're still not getting enough goals from the players behind him. Now, Barami and Cherny are picking up in that regard, so I hope that continues, because that will alleviate a little bit more pressure off of Dessers. And again, if we get a little bit of pressure off him, then that maybe helps him to play a bit better. And maybe you have to think that with the pressure that's on him, when he's getting these split second, or not the split second ones, those are the ones he does well. When he gets the time to think about it, he doesn't have that voice maybe in the back of his head going, "If you miss this, that's your weekend. You're going to get in the neck." So maybe that can help in that regard. We still need a little bit of that. As for Ridvan, I'm not sure we see much of Ridvan anymore, to be honest. He seems like he's quite keen on Casa, obviously coming in. He's played him on the left a couple of times. He moved him over when he brought on Tavernier. Now, that might just be because we're lacking the wingers, and so he's moving players around from that. But I don't know if we're actually going to see that much of him. But I think that'll be quite interesting to see whether we see much of him going forward, because I think that might indicate whether he's got a future after the end of this season.
Yeah. One to watch, I think, with Redvan. Scotty, just before we come on to the team itself, I just couldn't resist this. Matondo is a teammate, mate, unfortunately. What's your thoughts on that, mate? Do you think Matondo has a place in this team? I think we're all agreed he's not going to be a starter, but does he have a place as a squad filler, or do we just need shot?
I think if you could get Matondo fit through a run of matches, then you would see what he was capable of. You've seen against Ross County, what he's been working on the training ground in terms of darting across the front post, becoming a bit more of a goal threat, using his pace a bit better. I think that's something come on to try to work on him with. And I think it could be a more important player, but he's just not got the fitness to back it up. He's too injury prone for me. The three, I think the next three from the old guard, I think we need to get rid of are probably Redvan, Matondo and Kieran Dibble. And I think that should be something that's looked at in January.
Forgot about Dow for a minute.
Matondo could have a part to play, but like I say, Dave, he's far too injury prone for me. That's not to say that he couldn't come in and do a job off the left. I'm very cautious about changing anything in this team just now, especially midfield three. I would keep that midfield three until the international break. Do not change that on Sunday because it's working. It's a cohesive unit. To turn into a flat three, they know when they're going forward. Diamante's dragging people everywhere. It's just working. So don't do the biggest Philip Fleet. Come on, hang. We know we can then change things up and
start Kieran Dowell at 10.
Aye. Move by Rami into middle. Just leave it as it is. Leave it at 3. With maybe Danilo coming in up front makes for a decent striking option. It's good to get him some more minutes in the legs. And then hopefully when we come back for the international break, you've got guys like Cortez, Matondo, Redvan, all vying for a spot, but not necessarily coming in, because it's not really fair Redvan comes in and gets his shot back, because Jeff Day's been solid. He's been absolutely solid, and we could make a buck on him. Let's be honest about it. He's settled into a jersey really, really well, and I'm just very cautious about changing anything, because we're now starting to see what this team's trying to do on the park, and that's not having Tavernier in my lineup either. I think Sterling was solid enough last night. I think you need to keep it like that, and just bring these other guys in when and if needed.
Okay, and lastly, before we finish up, then just go around quickly. Score predictions. What are you thinking, Cammy?
2-0 Rangers.
2-0 Rangers.
Minimum of fuss. 2-0.
What about yourself, Doug?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking 2-0 myself. Like you say, hopefully it'll be a nice, straightforward game, no issues, and we can go into the break in a good mood.
It'd be nicer. Scotty, what are you thinking for it?
I'll be happy, Clapper. I'm going to go with a good performance in 3-0. I think that the confidence the guys got from last night's game, I hope we're going to carry it into Sunday. And if he sticks with this lineup, I think you're going to see a bit of a demolition.
I think I'm going to go 3-1. I do think there's an option for us to concede, but hopefully we've got enough to take it over the line. Okay, so thanks very much for tuning in, everyone. If you did like what you heard, then please like the video and remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Turn your notifications on. You will get advanced warning when we're going live. Until then, there will be a post-match after the game at the weekend and international schedule to be announced. But for now, just remember every night's a Rangers Journal night.